You know that feeling, right? That sense of worry about what's coming next. We call it anxiety, but what's really behind it? We're about to dig into the really complex mix of things that cause this super common human emotion, from what's going on inside our bodies to the world all around us.
I mean, think about it, that knot in your stomach before a huge presentation, the way your heart just pounds before a first date, or maybe just that kind of lingering, general feeling of unease about the future. Sound familiar?
If it does, you are so not alone. Anxiety is, a basic part of being human. But where it actually comes from? Well, that's a fascinating puzzle. A mix of our own internal wiring and the external world we have to deal with every single day. Okay, so let's get on the same page with a solid definition. See that key phrase right there, future-oriented? That's the whole game. Anxiety isn't really about what's happening right this second. It's about what might happen. It's our body's alarm system getting ready for a threat it sees coming down the road. First up, let's look inward. What's actually happening inside of us that can set the stage for anxiety? So, our own biology, for sure, plays a role. I mean, some of us might just have a genetic tendency that makes us a bit more sensitive to stress. Or anxiety can pop up as a symptom of some other medical issue, a side effect from medication, or, it can be triggered by recreational drug use. You can kind of think of these as the biological building blocks that can influence our baseline mood. But here is a super important point. While our biology is definitely a factor, a lot of research suggests that for just general, day-to-day anxiety, our environment, that often plays a much, much bigger part. Our genetic blueprint isn't our destiny here. Okay, so if our environment is so important, what are we talking about exactly? What kind of external pressures? This is where the story of anxiety gets really layered. Our experiences, especially the early ones, pretty much create the filter through which we see everything. Studies show these really clear lines between childhood trauma and anxiety down the road. But it's also things like our family life, cultural expectations, and, of course, just trying to navigate tough social situations. And now we got to talk about a heavier, more systemic cause of anxiety: discrimination. The American Psychological Association, or APA, makes it clear that the experience of systemic racism is a direct cause of psychological distress. And to see what that looks like in the real world, get this. A 2014 study of young men in New York City found they'd been stopped by police more than 8 times on average. The research showed a direct link. The more they were stopped, the higher their reported levels of anxiety. It's a heavy weight to carry. And beyond race, anxiety can also be deeply tied to our personal identities and the stigma that society can unfortunately attach to them. So, for example, lots of studies have found higher rates of anxiety among LGBTQIA+ people. Researchers believe this is directly connected to the chronic stress of being marginalized, of social exclusion, and for transgender individuals, the real distress of gender dysphoria. The sources of anxiety aren't just social, though. They can actually be global. This growing concern over the state of our planet has led to a whole new term: eco-anxiety. The APA even calls it a chronic fear of environmental doom. Yikes. And this is not some fringe feeling at all. A 2018 study found that 70% of people in the US are worried about climate change, and more than half of them said they feel helpless, which, as you can imagine, is a classic trigger for anxiety. All right, so we've established that anxiety comes from a ton of different places, and it's a totally normal response. But this brings us to an absolutely critical point: the difference between the emotion of anxiety and a clinical disorder. They are not the same thing. Look, feeling anxious is universal. It's temporary, and it's usually a direct response to something stressful. An anxiety disorder, on the other hand, is a diagnosable medical condition. The real differences are how often it happens, how severe it is, and the impact it has on your life. We're talking about recurring, intrusive thoughts that can seriously get in the way of just living. So, just to put that into perspective, the World Health Organization, or WHO, estimated that back in 2015, about 3.6% of people around the globe had a diagnosable anxiety disorder. And those numbers can change depending on where you look. In the Americas, for instance, the WHO reported that 7.7% of women have a diagnosed anxiety disorder. That's more than double the rate for men, which is at 3.6%. Okay, so we've looked at all these different pieces, from our genes to the entire globe. What's the big takeaway here? Why does it even matter to understand where this feeling comes from? Let's do a quick recap.
First, anxiety is a natural, even if it's uncomfortable, part of being human. Second, its causes are this really complex mashup of our inner biology and our outer experiences. Third, we just can't ignore the huge role that big systemic issues play. And finally, remembering that line between a common emotion and a clinical disorder is absolutely key to understanding ourselves and the people around us. So, this all brings us to one last crucial question. When we really get that anxiety isn't just some personal failing or a simple chemical thing, but it's a reaction to our life, our society, even our planet, how does that change the way we see it? Maybe it suggests that the most compassionate thing we can do for ourselves and for others is to just try and understand. Thanks for tuning in to this explainer.